Thank you, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. It's kind of really bright there, but if I stand here, I hope that's okay. So thank you, Amrita, David, and to York, to my first ever visit to this university. I'm just blown away by how big this place is. This is like a whole city. You should have told me that before. So absolutely thrilled to be here and lots to talk about. So So before I dive into the actual talk, it's important to kind of say a little bit about positionality, and you will understand why, because the whole talk is really about that. So somebody once called me a double agent in global health, and Julie asked me today to say why that is in the podcast that she recorded. It's just because I straddle two worlds, right? The first 30 years of my life was spent in India, much of it in a small town in South India. And the remaining 25 years of my life I have spent in North America, US and Canada. So I do straddle both worlds, and I'm happy with the label of being a dual agent in global health. But right now, I see myself as part of this global North elite club that we are all part of. So my thinking now is not to talk about my global South roots, but to ask you and me as global North elites, what exactly are we doing in global health? And what does our approach to global health look like, right? So we've all been discussing this during all our meetings today. I genuinely feel that the word polycrisis does justice to how I am feeling right now. Too many crises all colliding with each other and creating an absolute insane catastrophic sequence of events that is truly scary, not just the COVID or the climate change, but just the record number of conflicts since World War II. This broligarchy is a whole another new animal that I never even knew this term existed until this year. And boy, is that a perfect term, right? It really does capture the essence of where we are headed. And all of these crises are happening with this alarming erosion of democracy. This is from last year, right? US looks like a liberal democracy. I'm not sure anymore what the US is, right? This map will change color when it is redrawn at the end of 2025. And I fear for how fragile our democracies are. This is really an alarming period in history, lowest in over 50 years and getting worse. And ever widening economic inequities. I mean, the broligarchy isn't something that happened this year. The insane wealth that a handful of men primarily have, which outrivals half of the world's population. And not only are they wealthy, it's one thing if you're wealthy and you check off to the Bahamas on your yacht, but you're now actually involved in public policy. You are in White House, right? Nobody elected you, but you are in White House making life or death decision that reshapes entire world. Very, very scary. I think wealth concentration, I would argue, is one of the biggest threats to humankind. And if we don't talk about taxation and other things, we will never really genuinely get to the heart of what is going on. And I don't know, full frontal assault on science, on human rights, on academia, on equity initiatives, on diversity initiative. This isn't even a thinly veiled attempt to tell us what is good or not. This is a complete assault. That's why all of us in science, in academia, in global health are feeling like this is a personal attack on us because it feels that way, right? I can't even begin to understand how bad things have gotten in a matter of a few months. To have heroes at CDC shot 500 bullets against is just absolute insanity, right? We have to ask ourselves, how did we end here? And what does that mean for us? The death of USAID, the death of so many good multilateral instruments that the world had invested in years ago. I mean, I can't even understand the catastrophic impact of all of this. It's not just the US. biggest ever aid cut by G7 members, a death sentence for millions of people. Will Canada stand up and shine in this period of crisis? I think not. I fear not, because nobody can think outside of tariffs right now. There is no headspace for anything big and creative and good in this moment of crisis. So multilateralism is fading and fading very quickly. So I think the conclusion one would draw is that global health and development as we knew it maybe last year is on life support. And we're all feeling it. Various people are directly feeling the impacts of everything. And here are some of the modeling studies. I won't go through any of them, but in every disease area that has been modeled, tuberculosis, HIV, women's health, child health, doesn't matter. Just look at that one summary figure alone. 25 million deaths is what could happen if the US ends global health funding. Now, 25 million, curiously enough, is roughly what the world lost due to COVID-19. 25 million excess deaths, if you account for underreporting of deaths, is approximately what the world lost due to COVID. Now, I can understand even losing people to a virus, but losing people to this level of structural violence and wanton destruction of everything is a whole another issue that I can't wrap my head around. And so now lots of proposals on how to reimagine global health. People are publishing one a day, maybe more, right? And I looked at it. I'm part of this Lancet commissioning, Lancet paper on reimagining global health. And so and Vikram Patel at Harvard is leading this effort. So I told Vikram, there's already 1 million proposals out there, right? What exactly are we going to say? And here's just a small list of all the proposals on how to reimagine global health, how to reimagine aid, what does development assistance should look like. This isn't even a tiny fraction of all that is out there, okay? And so I read most of them because I'm thinking about what this Lancet paper should say or not. And here is what I'm finding. Who gets to reimagine global health is as important as what is proposed, right? So when you look at all these articles that I just showed you, I'm generally finding that when the proposal to reimagine global health comes from global north, i.e. you and I, people like you and I, Americans, for example, or Europeans, the proposals are as follows. Let's increase aid. Let's bring back USAID again, right? Oh, US needs to continue to be a soft power. Oh, US decline will make China more powerful. So therefore, we should continue to invest in aid. Enlightened self-interest. Oh, look, if you don't do this, Ebola is going to come back. Something else is going to come back. It's better to do now rather than deal with it later. And look at the economic consequences for global north. If we allow diseases to run riot in the global south, we will end up paying a lot more, right? If you look at the proposals from global south voices, you see a massive shift in how they are starting to think about it. Many of them have said, great, now is the time to liberate ourselves from this foreign aid business. We need to be self-reliant. We need to exercise our agency. We need to determine our own destiny. We need to center our local needs, what the donor, not what the donor is saying, what our look. We need to build regional capacity to make vaccines and medicines, lenacapavir, whatever we want to do so that we're not waiting for aid to come and save us. And we need to invest more in the health of our own people. Isn't that such a lovely and interesting contrast? It genuinely makes you wonder how we even think about who needs to reimagine global health. Now, I kid you not, I was asked to review an article on coming up with a new definition of global health, as opposed to the Kaplan definition from Lancet, Copeland definition of global health. So I said, fine. And I look at the paper, it's mostly American authors wanting to redefine global health. And I have genuinely a problem. In the midst of all this craziness, if all you can say is a bunch of Americans are going to get together and redefine global health, fundamentally that's tone deaf right now. You are not hearing. You're not centering on those who, I think these are all good people. I'm not questioning their integrity, but I'm saying even the smartest, thoughtful people are not able to understand that there is a good reason why things are collapsing. And we need to take this opportunity to genuinely ask, where are the best solutions in global health going to come from? And so the article that Amrita has shared with all of you just got published recently with an incredibly diverse authorship, amazing people from around the world who participated in writing this. So let me walk you through what we said, and then I'll be very, very happy to take questions. If you violently disagree, I'm happy to have you disagree. Let's have a conversation. So firstly, let me pause a minute and define how we thought about reimagining imagination spaces and solution spaces. So to me, imagination is the first step, as Paul Farmer said so beautifully. If you can't even imagine something, then you will never come to even realize it. So the battle has to be won twice. First in our imagination, second in actually implementing it. So as Paul so beautifully taught us, and there are shout out to all the partners and health colleagues in the room, Paul was a huge fan of saying, don't let anyone limit your imagination. So for example, WHO told Paul, and this is well before people like Amrita and I started working on TB, I guess. They said, don't treat MDR. Remember that discussion? Oh, Haiti, don't treat DRTB. It's going to be not cost effective. He said, no, I am going to treat drug-resistant TB in Haiti, come hell or high water. And he did. They said, don't give antiretrovirals in Africa. It's known to be cost effective. He said, the hell with cost effective, I am doing it. Why? Because Haitians are people. And if they have TB, they deserve care. That is the only debate that he's willing to even indulge in. So I think Paul is an example of someone who consistently fought against limiting our own imagination. If we start off with a limited imagination, then the solution space automatically shrinks because you haven't even conceived of possibilities, right? So in an ideal world in global health, we should have no limits placed on our imagination to start with. We start with a blank slate. Anyone is free to propose any idea. Dream big. Then you may end up with a decent set of solutions, of which only some might work. We could live with that funnel, right? Not everything is implementable, so on and so forth. So I genuinely think our task in global health is to start with the broadest imagination possible, then come up with the broadest set of solutions we can dream of, and then maybe we'll end up doing some of it. So here goes. How do we expand or shrink our imagination space? So to explain this in our article, we resorted to lots of case studies. And I've added even more in this presentation. And I'm sure each of you can think of many more than what I've been able to outline. The first case study is this. Now, this guy, as you all know who he is, just hit $500 billion in wealth. He's on his way to becoming the world's first trillionaire. Now, I don't even know how many zeros are there in a trillion. I don't know, I don't care. I know it's a lot. Okay? Now, this guy, a month ago, posts this on his own platform. The path to solving hunger, disease, and poverty is AI and robotics. Oh, for Christ's sakes. Get the hell out of here. I mean, what is this? And how does the world's richest guy get to tell us how to solve hunger, poverty, stuff that he knows nothing about? And obviously, taxing the wealth was not a solution that he even remotely considered, right? Well, taxing the rich absolutely is a solution for hunger and poverty and disease, because that is where all the wealth is. And how many million people could get universal health coverage if the billionaires paid their fair share of taxes, right? None of us would be wanting for healthcare If only that could make happen. Now, he is the same guy who destroyed USAID in a matter of weeks, who's tried to destroy PEPFAR, destroyed NIH, destroyed CDC. Here is a guy, and Elon Musk's legacy, as the New York Times put it in their cover story, is disease, starvation, and death. So the guy who wreaked havoc on the world is now telling us how to solve disease, hunger, and death. This doesn't make any sense at all. Nobody in their right mind should be taking advice from him, of all people, on issues that he knows nothing about. So this is just like a stark case study, but to me, it starts telling us who gets to talk about what, and what credibility do they have, or lived experience do they have in that particular area. So let's continue. Second case study, gun violence in America. Oh boy, we're all terrified to know what's coming tomorrow, right? And I just pull out the stats for you. United States is now averaging more than 2 mass shootings per day. Per day. And the number of guns that Americans have is like off the scale compared to any peer country. Okay? So now, here is a country, the world's richest country, cannot prevent kids from getting slaughtered in schools with military-grade assault rifles. And what do American policymakers have to offer? Thoughts and prayers. That's about all anyone is able to do at this point. I mean, even Biden tweeted, as a nation, we must ask, when in the God's name will we stand up to the gun lobby? Now, to understand why America allows people to get killed every day, you need to understand that they have shrunk their own solution space. They have completely blocked out some of the best solutions to gun violence that Canada, UK, Germany, Japan, and everybody and their brother has implemented. They are architects of this disaster because they have shrunk the policy space. And that's because nearly a half of Congress incumbents have taken money from the gun lobby. Okay? When you take money from the gun lobby, you will not do anything about controlling guns. So if America has to make progress, they have to open up the solution space. They need to just take lessons from Canada, UK, and every other wealthy countries. They can solve gun violence overnight if they wanted to. But they won't, they can't, because they have chosen to completely wall off a whole bunch of solutions. There is no solution except thoughts and prayers. Let's continue with a third case study, climate crisis. This is the infamous speech from UNGA, right? Barely a couple of weeks ago, where Trump told every head of state sitting in the building that climate change is the greatest con job ever perpetuated. And Trump, by just instantaneously saying that to all world leaders in one of the highest platforms imaginable that anybody in the world can get, has shrunk all our solution space in climate crisis. Single-handedly, he is pushing the climate change agenda back by decades with just that kind of a sweeping statement that destroys 3 decades of climate science. 30 COP conferences, 30 climate conferences, innumerable climate science reports, all thrown under the bus, but just that one statement, this is a con job, you don't need to do anything about climate change anymore. Now, this is an amazing example how you not only shrink the solution space for your own country, you're now shrinking it for the whole world. And that's exactly what he's gone ahead and done. He has destroyed climate monitoring within America. He's destroyed climate science within America. Climate scientists in the US don't get funded anymore. Grants have been taken away from people. People are changing climate change into extreme weather events in their grant proposals. I could even live with that. That's your domestic policy. But he is now bullying every other country to give up on their climate goals, including Canada. And yesterday or day before, I read this Washington Post piece that our Canadian leaders now are advocates for fossil fuel. Now, you think hard about where Canada was at one point. We were a shining star within the G7. We made pledges. We were part of the Paris Agreement. We were monitoring progress towards 1.5 Celsius. Now we are like, yes, fossil fuels is our future. This is regression at an unprecedented level, okay? This is how you shrink the solution space for the whole world, by essentially throwing all of climate science under the bus and then lifting up fossil fuels. As I think Trump is the #1 advocate for fossil fuel companies, bar none right now. Let's continue with that discussion on climate change and Davos, right? These are like really funny cartoons on Davos, but this is so real. People fly into Davos on their private jets and then sit on a panel and talk about climate change, right? It's like the most ironic thing there is ever, right? These guys, Oxfam has said, 50 of the world's richest billionaires took 184 private flights in a single year, producing as much carbon as the average person would in 300 years. Here we are recycling our plastic spoons, right? Doing our little bit, biking to work, buying an electric car. And these guys are blowing through their carbon elements within a matter of seconds. And then poor Africa is blamed. Asia is blamed for causing climate crisis. It's just complete insanity if you think about it. And so Ruther Bregman attended one of the Davos meetings, and he called them out. He said almost no one raises the real issue of tax avoidance. He said, it feels like I'm at a firefighters conference and no one is allowed to speak about water. So he said, stop talking about charity, start talking about taxes, all the rest is bullshit. This is how you expand the solution space, right? And instead, what do these billionaire classes do when they go to Davos? They'll invariably talk to you about technological fix like carbon capture. Oh, we'll have a giant machine that will suck up carbon out of the air and everything will be fine. Don't talk about overconsumption. Don't talk about your crazy lifestyle, your private yachts, your private jets. Definitely don't talk about poverty, wealth concentration. Just talk about carbon emissions. So this carbon tunnel vision is exactly the same as shrinking our solution space. There's all of these potential solutions, but you are laser beam focused on one little area because you don't want others to even think about them, right? So when somebody says just focus on carbon capture, they are shrinking our solution space. We need to fight to broaden that space. And when Global South colleagues talk about climate crisis, as this incredible leader, she to me is one of the best leaders in the world right now. One with still a moral fiber and has credibility and authenticity even to talk about these things. The Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, she said, here are our solutions for climate change. We did not cause it. The global north did. You guys pay us. Pay us damages as climate reparations, but also cancel the damn debts we are drowning under. Debt relief, reparations. Look suddenly how the solution space has changed, right? Instead of just focusing on carbon capture, these are solutions that are emerging from Global South leaders. Spectacular case study of how you can shrink or expand the solution space depending on who's articulating what and who gets to speak. Compare Trump, compare the solution spaces that Global South scholars and leaders are telling us about. Here's the next case study, a very famous one. You've all heard this or seen this before. This is the USAID administrator. I actually heard he was a pretty good, kind person, okay? He may be good, kind, but he made a massive mistake in telling the whole world that in 2001, this is not even like 1990s, you know? In 2001, he told everyone, if we had HIV medicines for Africa, we would not distribute them because Africans don't know what watches and clocks are.
He didn't really say that, did he?
He did in public. You can go find his video.
Yeah.
In 2001, he shrunk the solution space for a whole continent. single-handedly, because of the platform and the podium as a lead of USAID at that time, he shrunk the solution space for everyone in Africa, right? And when Africans were asked what their solution space looks like, of course they said, we want ARVs. They had to fight a battle for decades before antiretrovirals became available. Look at the numbers. 20 years before ARVs reached the continent that needed it the most, sub-Saharan Africa. What a tragedy this is. If the solution space had been widened earlier, we would have all pushed hard for ARVs to become available. Today, you and I don't think much about ARVs, right? Because it's available. But at one point, it looked radical for people, right? The solution space was shrunk. I was told when I was practicing medicine in India at the peak of HIV, just promote condoms. And there was another time period when World Bank said, just promote abstinence, USAID. That was a policy. That's all we could offer, right? But the solution space was much broader than that, and it took a lot of time. Now, COVID is another stunning example. Now, you would think that we would have learned all our lessons from HIV/AIDS, the heroic advocacy that was necessary, and we had to repeat it all again with COVID vaccine equity. All the HIV folks told us right at the start when COVID vaccines become available, watch out. This is going to play out again because we've seen it, right? They are the ones who coined the word vaccine apartheid, right? And COVAX, as well-intentioned as it was primarily a global North construct, and it was based on charity, and it was also naive in the sense it did not anticipate how the Canadas of the world are going to become vaccine hoarders. We cornered the market, right? We bought way more vaccines than we needed, and we did not share it adequately. And we also didn't anticipate, we should have anticipated that Big Pharma will do what Big Pharma does, sell to the highest bidder. Why sell to COVAX when you can sell to America, right? The whole thing fell apart. Many of us, Mark, me, PIH, we were all advocating for COVID vaccine equity. And it was so challenging. And at the end of the day, millions of people in the global south never saw even one dose. 25 million excess deaths, and modeling suggests that about half may have been avoided if we could have equitably shared vaccines at the right time. And the tragedy doesn't even continue here. Look at the solution space here. So US government gave Moderna 10 billion American taxpayer dollars. If at all there is a vaccine during COVID that you could have called a people's vaccine, it's Moderna. How many of you got Moderna? It saved my life. I know it saved my life. That doesn't mean I don't criticize Moderna, right? We have to ask hard questions. So when you give people taxpayer dollars, why do you not attach a clause saying that you will not price gouge? You will offer it at a reasonable price. Make your money, make a reasonable profit, but have some bounds on greed, right? So here's what happened then. Moderna CEO made $40 million a year during the pandemic, $40 million annual salary to one guy, okay? Moderna made billions in profit using public investments, and Moderna refused to hand over the vaccine recipe to South Africa and other countries that asked for it. Today, mRNA technology is under attack by RFK Jr., but it is still the monopoly of Moderna and Pfizer. And it's an amazing platform that could be repurposed to develop therapeutics against cancer, multiple other infectious diseases. So again, when you look at Global South solutions are invariably saying this: we must take control of our own vaccine manufacturing. We need to make our own medicines, otherwise we will be left behind again and again and again, as did happen during Mpox. Mpox again, Africa got left behind. Same story all over again. Nothing ever changes in global health because the structures never change in global health. Global North conferences are another way to shrink our space. That picture is a real one taken at the Montreal AIDS conference in 2022. Were any of you there at the AIDS meeting in Montreal? Mark was there, I was there. It was devastated by visa denials by the Canadian government. And you know who was denied the most? African colleagues. Now, how do you have an HIV meeting without Africans at the table? Help me make that sense. Here is a continent that has been devastated by HIV/AIDS, continues to suffer from HIV/AIDS. If Africans are not at the table, of what point is that conference? And guess where the Tropical Medicine Conference is going to be held this year? In this city. Toronto is tropical, right? For a few weeks, like as tropical as Montreal is. I don't know what this all means, people. I just don't. I have a huge struggle in my mind on what we are trying to accomplish. And again, I promise you, people will struggle to come to Toronto for the Tropical Medicine Conference. People who need to be here, who know the most about tropical diseases, will not even get a visa appointment from our embassy. I know. I've written a whole piece in the Lancet about how messed up this is. Can you imagine going to the United States now for a global health meeting? I'm terrified of going to the United States. I don't know who's going to whisk me off the streets wearing a mask. This is complete madness. And yet we have CUGH in Washington, DC next year. We are struggling. The TB conference this year is going to be in Denmark, for Christ's sakes. I don't know when was the last time they even saw one case of TB in Denmark. If they did see a case of TB in Denmark, it'll be national news. And already people have been denied visas. Already people have been denied visas. There's an amazing TB book author who I invited to be on a panel, denied a visa. I don't know what to do. What does this mean? When the most knowledgeable people about TB can't make it, how is it a global health meeting, right? Let's think a little bit more about what we're trying to do. So I wrote a piece on visa-friendly venues for global health meetings. I promise you, Canada is not on my list. United States, not on my list. UK is a basket case. UK is absolutely visa hostile. Did you see the anti-immigration march in London?
Yeah.
2 weeks ago? 100,000 people were on the streets of London, okay? And Schengen visa is a nightmare. I'm sending 2 of my students from McGill to Denmark. So they had to go to Ottawa to apply for a visa with 2-page worth of checklist of documents, including the house deed that they bought or sold, 8 years of salary, confirmed ticket, confirmed hotel, confirmed medical insurance. I'm like, this is only for the rich. Nobody else has even a chance to get in here. Many of you are nodding your heads because you know what this trauma is all about. So I'm done with the case studies. Now I want to pull it back and say, if we genuinely want to change how we think about global health and expand our imagination of solution, what can we do? We are inherently going to struggle in global health. And why is that? Because global health architecture is entirely skewed towards us. Where are the biggest global health organizations headquartered? Just look at the map. Where are the Gavis, the global funds, the USAIDs, the Gates Foundations? They're all in the global north. Who are the leaders of these organizations? Mostly men in the global north. Who's sitting on the boards of these organizations? Mostly global north. In fact, American and British folks alone take half of the board seats on all the major organizational boards. The entire field is designed, as Shea Bimbola put it so beautifully, the entire field is foreign gaze oriented. It's all about what elite people think can or should be done in the space of global health. And where do all global health dollars go? We all know USAID money primarily went to contractors in the Washington, DC area, and then finally trickled down to where it needed to go. Who is editing? What do I tell you? Who is publishing? What do I tell you? It's all us. I'm including myself, okay? You and I are part of this global north architecture of global health. Some of you are going to teach a course on global health architecture. This is the architecture. We didn't create it, but we are part of it. Okay, we did not create this architecture, but you and I are part of this, no questions asked. So now I'm saying, if we genuinely want to reimagine global health, Should it still continue to be reimagined by people like us? Or do we gently figure out a way where we are no longer the ones, we are not the movers and shakers. We find ways to share power. Shifting power is very hard for us, does not come naturally. We were discussing about all the tenure and promotion criteria at our universities, including mine, right? It's all about first authorship. It's all about how many grants I have as PI, how many awards I have. It's very hard for us to even break out of this mode. Like I said, we didn't create this, but we are part of it. And it's very hard for us to figure out how to even think about shifting power. So when you get a chance, read our proposal. We're saying Global South absolutely needs to lead. They are the ones to solve. I mean, South Africa has to solve its HIV crisis. Amrita and I cannot. But Amrita and I can be allies if South African colleagues asked us to support them in some way. India has to solve its malnutrition crisis. Not me, not anyone sitting here. And if they ask, we can play a supportive role for them. Uganda has to solve its malaria crisis. You and I can't, right? It's a very difficult frame shift for all of us. It needs us to be humble ourselves, but also teach humility to our young people who join Global Health in your degree program and my degree program. So if you can, please put Shay's book on your reading list. Amazing book. Whole book is free of charge. Download the PDF. He speaks so much about how global health got centered on the wrong people. Wrong people is you and I here. We are far, far away from the problem, and yet global health is all about us. What we feel, what we will do, what we will not do, what we will tell others to do, right? It's about the recentering. So he says, you have to recenter global health and localize global health on people who are so-called at the periphery. Beautiful statement that he made. Marginalized people are the experts of their own lives. Right? And I want to give a shout out to Dr. Sheila Zubrick, who wrote this spectacular book 40 years ago called Raku's Story, where she centered on the people that really mattered. What is that mother who's trying to navigate healthcare in rural Tamil Nadu saying? What is that traditional birth attendant saying? It wasn't about what someone from Toronto was saying. That is the frame shift we are actually looking for in global health. If you want to look at some more inspiring examples and books, take a look at these two brilliant books on centering patients in healthcare. Right? How many of you have gone to get a medical procedure done in your health system? Did anyone even ask you how you felt about it? Could it be improved or not improved? We all have horror stories to tell, right? Even that the gown they make you wear, that horrible gown where your butt is visible to the whole world, it is so dehumanizing. And I kept asking myself, in all these centuries, why hasn't someone come up with a better hospital gown? One that asks people how they feel, right? So this time around, when I went for my colonoscopy, they gave me two gowns, one for the butt and one for the front. I said, wow, somebody is finally listening to people, right? We've been bitching about this for a long, long time, just to say that lived experience absolutely matters. And people in HIV/AIDS demonstrated that years ago, that without people living with HIV at the forefront, I don't think that pandemic would have ever been controlled. And so I just want to end with a few inspiring examples. As hard as it is today, we all know how bad things were in the past. I think David was trying to give us some hope yesterday over dinner conversations. I already gave you an example of HIV and how they managed to finally swing the epidemic away from the horror days of the pandemic, civil rights, women's suffrage, anti-apartheid. There are so many people's movements that have successfully fought and shifted power, and it's happening right now as we speak. Whether it's the demonstrations against the violence, wars, conflicts, Black Lives Matter, climate justice, March for Science, March against Trump, whatever you want to do it, there are young people and people who are doing it. Yesterday, 50,000 people were on the streets of Montreal, right? So people are thinking hard about what they can do, and they're putting their hand and standing up for what they think is right. And I read 4 books all published in recent past, all spectacular books, to be honest. And I asked myself, they're all about movements, okay, people's movements. And I think this one is a very famous one, Marshall Gans. Marshall Gans was a critical person in the worker rights movements, right? In the worker rights movements, the Mexican farm workers in California. So that's where he came from. Ben Phillips ended up working at UNAIDS. This guy was a former head of Oxfam, and Sarah Schulman is an amazing author. So when I look at all these books, having read all of them, I ask myself, what's the secret sauce for a successful people's movement? If you really wanted to change something, what would you need to do? They all say the same thing. It's all about organizing, growing communities, and building power among people to effect a change. In short, change never comes from leaders. So I don't expect Trump to wake up tomorrow and suddenly become a saint. He can't, he won't. I don't expect Elon Musk to make a change. We'll have to figure out a way to make that change. And I think that is the big lesson for all of us. So I think my last slide, and this advice applies to me as well. The next time you and I are given an opportunity to reimagine global health, write a paper, plan a conference, a webinar, a commission, a meeting, whatever we do, we ask a few very simple questions. And I think that graphic is how we grow imagination. Firstly, is this our work to do? I cannot tell you how often I get media people writing to me saying, Professor Pai, can you talk about what is happening with this crisis in India? I'm like, no. Here's the name of people in India, but in the midst of this crisis, that's who you should be interviewing, right? I happen to be easy for you to reach, but that's not, I don't know. I cannot tell you with any great authenticity what is happening in India. You need to ask the right people. So the first thing is it even my job to speak about something that I don't understand well? So if so, say no and suggest other people, right? Deflect it to where it needs to go. That's the first step. Are we the right people to lead this, or should we step back and hold space as allies or co-liberators for others instead, right? Can you, Professor Pai, can you join this webinar on vaccine manufacturing in Africa? No. I know something about it, but I am not the person you're looking for. You need to have Africans working on vaccine manufacturing. We come and tell you what the hell's going on, right? It takes humility, because it's easy to say yes, because I want to be in New York Times, I want to be on CBC, I want to write for Lancet, but it takes a lot of effort to redirect that to where it needs to go. Have we assembled the right expertise by centering those who are most vulnerable and knowledgeable? So all of those things is how you grow your imagination. Get patient advocates in the room. If it's a cancer meeting, make sure cancer survivors open your meeting. If it's a TB conference, get TB survivors. In fact, Amrita will tell you, we've made some mistakes ourselves. Can I talk about that, Amrita? So Amrita wanted to write a piece with me on stigma and TB. So we wrote it. We submitted it. BMJ Global Health is like, yes, we're publishing it. Then suddenly it struck me at night. I said, Amrita, how on earth are we writing about TB and stigma without a TB survivor? So I went groveling on my knees. I apologized to the editor. I said, we made a mistake. Can we pull this back? Can we go back, do what we need to do, and come back? And the editor was Shea Bimbola. He said, of course, right? So Amrita went, engaged Nandita, and that piece finally came out with Nandita as a co-author, much more strong and powerful than it ever used to be. I ran a summer institute that Amrita and others know for many, many years, never invited a TB survivor to open my TB course. I'm not pleased. I'm not proud. I woke up halfway through, and now every TB course of mine opens with a TB survivor, right? We have to do this and bring this intentionality. Otherwise, I will quote only Global North people. When I write in Forbes, I can only quote men. This is how we end up doing it, because we are not even asking. We're not even thinking, who are we platforming? So if we wanted to make a change, we totally can. Don't tell me this can't be done. All of you and I react viscerally to an all-male panel, yes? Do we all not call out an all-male panel? How is this different? Would it be okay to have an entire panel on Africa's future in climate crisis and only have global North folks on it? Does it make sense? Where are the African voices? Isn't it their life we're talking about? So this is not rocket science. It is totally within the realm of the possible, but we have to bring intentionality to it. Otherwise, we will slip right back into familiar patterns of changing and behaving. We've all heard this, right? Any number of times we've been told this. Living up to this slogan is absolutely difficult. It does not come naturally to any of us, especially in academia. And I heard York is building bridges with communities. You really want them to be community-centered, then communities have to be a big part of your thinking. They need to be on your advisory boards. HIV folks do it all the time. We need to do it. People with disabilities remind us this. Indigenous colleagues remind us this. We have to figure it out. So no panel on Indigenous health without Indigenous people on it. That is the bare minimum we need to be doing. Thank you so much. So we have about 30 minutes for Q&A, so I've left plenty of time. Amrita, how do you want to moderate? Yes, sir.
Oh,
Didn't Musk go to McGill?
No, Musk didn't go to McGill.
No.
Thank God, no.
Okay.
He was in Toronto.
Yeah, but I thought he went to. No, all right. That's good news, I guess.
I had a question about your framing of expertise.
Mhm.
So in the beginning of your talk, you were saying, these men who are making, unfathomable amounts of money calling themselves experts. And at the end of your presentation, you were saying, well, people with lived experiences, they're the real experts. So, as a PhD student, we're building our expertise in a certain locus of knowledge. And I was just wondering, what are your thoughts on sort of impeding that front side of your lecture and saying, well, these folks are not experts, and also amplifying the people that are the experts?
Beautiful question. So Amrita knows the story. So I had a PhD student called Lena. So I have mentored, I don't know how many PhD students by now, but it never occurred to me to have my PhD students present their TB thesis proposal to TB survivors and to get input. Lena completely shattered my mind. She came to me and said, I want to present my PhD thesis proposal to a whole panel of TB survivors, get their input before I proceed. It was not a requirement in my department. There's no such requirement in my department. We get ethics approval, we have our own protocol defense, all that is fine. There was no expectation. I said, Lena, do it. She said, I want money. I want to pay an honorarium to all of them. I said, Lena, you have the money. Go ahead. So she did it. And then she and others wrote a big article recently, published in PLOS GPH, that TB researchers should start engaging TB survivors as part of the research. So I don't know what your thesis is going to be, but let's say you're working on homelessness. Just have people with lived experience of homelessness come and vet your proposal. Convene a committee, ask them to be on your advisory board. This is different from your supervisors. Your supervisors are all PhDs and whatnot, but have a lived experience committee tell you, no, this is not making any sense to us. You're not asking the question that we care the most about, right? This would be in a different world be called participatory research, community-based research, whatever you want to call it. But at a minimum, you can run your protocol by people with lived experience. That is not difficult. You can find them everywhere. If it's on cancer, present it to cancer survivors and say, what do you think? Right? That I think is within the realm of the possibility. It may or may not be a requirement in your department, but you can go ahead and do it with the blessings of your supervisor. It should be completely feasible. Who's next?
So you mentioned about the quote from Elon Musk, the path to solving hunger, disease, and poverty is AI and robotics. How do you see this statement? 1 GB wireless data costs less than a cup of tea, which is told by a head of the state, which the state has more than 50% of the population below poverty.
Well, I'm not sure I understand the question,
So
Kadir.
the statement from the head of the state
Yeah.
was 1 GB wireless data
Yeah.
cost less than cup of a tea.
Yeah.
And the head of the state actually is heading the state, which is more than 50% of the population below poverty line.
So again, everybody talks about how mobile phone has revolutionized lives of people. So I'm not against technology. So there is a legitimate role for AI or robotics. But the naivety of the statement is what bothers me the most, that you somehow magically think that robotics or AI will solve hunger or poverty without touching any of the underlying structural determinants, right? Yes, 1 GB of data might be cheap, but you also need to feed people, right? That is the kind of stuff we need to be talking about.
Yes.
Thank you, Prof. Pai, so much for the presentation. It's very traditional.
Please introduce yourself to
My
Dr.
name is Imran Ali. I'm director of water. I think you've given us some good guidance on how, especially you can bring in survivors of specific illnesses when we're working in that particular domain area. But I'm thinking more like panels and stuff, or like where we have to select from a large community of people a representative.
Mhm.
And then how do you avoid the twin dangers of either tokenism or protection in those situations?
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, a classic example of what we end up doing is 6 men on the panel and 1 woman moderator. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
That's our solution to this problem, right? We are not even able to think how to have an equal representation. Sometimes it doesn't have to be perfectly equal, but you got to put in the effort, right? And what I find in all the global North panels that we are a part of, we invariably invite each other. We invariably invite each other when you know there's amazing talent available to you. So at least until the pandemic and Zoom became so easy, I could have even lived with it. But now I'm struggling. Now you would have to have a very hard excuse for just having a bunch of global North people talk about problems far away. That is like super awkward in 2025. We really can and should do better. It takes more time, it takes more effort, but it is absolutely possible. Amrita spoke about the journal that I was the inaugural editor-in-chief of, PLOS Global Public Health. When I was asked to create that journal, I told the publisher, I know exactly what's wrong with global health publishing. I've even published a study on it. You need to allow me to build a very diverse, equitable editorial board, right from the editor-in-chief. I said, I'm global North, I'm male. We need to have a global South woman as my co-editor-in-chief. They said, fine, do it. And then Catherine came on board. Then I said, I need half my editorial board to be from the global South. They said, fine, do it. Half should be women at least. When I say half, it's aspirational. Sometimes we hit more, sometimes we hit less. But you've got to at least have some notional idea of how to diversify. And we didn't come up with it. A study was done independently. That independent study said PLOS Global Public Health is the world's most diverse global health journal. I started breathing when I saw that paper because I knew how hard we were working, but that's not the same as looking at the numbers. Recently, another study was done looking at all the opinion articles and reviews and essays in our journal, and we were not that good. Most of the opinions and review articles were from Global North. Why is that? Because Global North authors know how to pitch themselves. I get a pitch every day from Harvard, Hopkins, London School, because that's what we do. Every day we are so confident in putting out a pitch because that's what we are incentivized to do. The people who know the most have no idea that they can even pitch, right? That's why the Lancets of the world are so skewed towards the global North. It is very hard for them to change how they do business. So this is just to say I have learned a lot by helping build that journal. And one of the biggest lessons I learned is if you're not intentional, it all goes to where it normally goes, which is this, right? We are the inherent leaders of global health in our minds, and therefore we end up occupying all the space. So it takes extra effort and intentionality and hard work if you want to go against the trend. But I think we showed in a small way that it is possible.
Question, yes.
Please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Inaugural. I'm a Canvas research student from the University of Waterloo. My question is, do you have any experience with knowledge translation and mobilization efforts with your research? Because not everyone, for the study population, they're not always going to have access or want to read a research article. I was wondering if you've done any of those. I could give an example, because in my research is something I would like to do. So.
I think it almost requires us to do that. I'm not saying I found great answers, but I blog a lot. I'm active on social media. I write for newspapers and stuff like that. So that's one way that I think we can all, you have a communications course for public health people that you plan to...
Up and coming.
Up and coming. So I taught a course, Claire, you were in my class. So a whole class, all my students, including her, had to write an op-ed and publish it. She also did a media interview. So we can slowly start teaching how to get their work in the public domain in a simple language manner, right? I'm not saying this or that. We still publish in the Lancet, but we also have a lay summary in an op-ed or radio. Radio is actually powerful. Podcasts. Julie, where's Julie? Julie recorded a podcast with me. So you have podcasts. You can think of other opportunities. The bad guys are on media all the time, and they're spreading disinformation. So the question is, how can we counter that? I think we need to be in the media as well. We need to crowd out the bad, and we can't just publish in Lancet and expect that it will be read. Most journal articles are never read. Sorry, but that's
we do have assignments. I know Matthew's course, he has assignments where, students are encouraged to write a journal, like a blog, a media post, essentially.
Yeah. All right.
Questions?
There's some online here.
Let's do the online questions, a couple of them.
I can read it here.
Oh, wait, you can read them.
Okay, Mohammed, what pragmatic advice would you give to early career global health professionals from the North and South? What should they do to not get disillusioned with all this hypocrisies, double standards, and ethical practices? I think even in the midst of all this craziness, I still believe there are good people doing good work. You got to find yourself as a young person in the right group, not solo. Find like-minded people with whom you can attach yourself, and suddenly you find that you are part of the solution, right? So it doesn't matter your global North or your global South. There are good people. There are amazing people here at York. Find someone inspiring in their lab and be a part of. Global health is not a solo sport. It is a team sport. It would require us to genuinely work in teams. So that would be my biggest advice. Don't give up. It's hard to feel gloom and doom these days, I'll be honest. Every day is bringing more bad news, but we have to find safe spaces to even talk about these things.
Thank you. Some other comments about royalty-free voluntary licensing agreements for new technologies as one step ahead towards equalizing the playing field.
Yeah, Maureen is saying she was there. She agrees with the issue of visa denials. Conferences should be held in the countries most affected. I agree. And I'm pushing hard. I wrote to, when our Lancet paper on global conferences came, I sent it to CUGH, World Health Summit, Union, International AIDS Society. I said, guys, please think hard about what you're doing, right? I think at a minimum, where I think all conference organizers can land on is a rotation policy. 1 year in the global North, 1 year in the global South. That would be at least like the rock bottom if you call it a global health meeting. Right? It will still not solve everything. And there are some global South countries which are also visa hostile. Right? South Africa is not a safe country for the other African nations. Did you know that?
So I'm sorry, say that again.
South Africa is not welcoming to other African people. So South Africa visa is hard for other Africans to get.
Oh.
Right? So we have to work harder. There was this HSR conference that ran into trouble in Colombia, I think. Yeah. There were similar visa issues. It's a nightmare. One has to work very hard. We are suffering at McGill. We no longer can invite anyone to come to McGill without a 6 to 12 months delay of visa processing. Mark knows, for Zaki Ahmed, we had to work so hard to get him a visa. So I don't know what to tell you. I'm not expecting any enlightened leadership from our government at this point. David?
So first of all, thanks. This is a great presentation. Really appreciated you. You've challenged us on our privilege and legitimacy from the North, but also being quite strong in saying, you know, what are the spaces in which we can change and how do we do that in our academics? Thank you for that. I had two questions. One of which is needs your TB expertise. As someone who has had my latent TB treated and cured, am I a TB survivor or one who is privileged to be in a place that I can get that done with just a few months of treatment? The second is more about if you can expand on, because an underlying theme was that, yes, this is global health and we are allies and we need to promote the solidarity. A lot of what you talked about is the spaces, the academic types of tools we have. I was wondering, and that's been very helpful, but I was wondering if we could say a little bit more about the content and the way in which we do our work, and you know, how do you make influence? How do you show that allyship beyond the conferences and the papers, but in actually the content of the work that we are doing and the way we do that?
Thank you, David. So on the allyship and demonstrating, I think many of my former trainees are in the room. Amrita, Charity, Mikashmi. For years, my TB research lab, although we're based at McGill, we have just served WHO. For virtually no money, no recognition, we just do and support them, right? Same thing when I send some of my students to support the Indian government with the TB program. I tell them, go there just to serve. You may not be on the paper at all, and that's fine, right? It's the Government of India project. They need to own it. It's their job to solve TB, but they're asking us for some help. Let's go support them with data analysis or whatever. Just don't have any expectation that you're going to be the lead author and all that. Now, that's hard for us, right? Our students also want credit. They're pushing themselves to the front. But it takes time to explain to them why this kind of service is a good thing. I'm sure you've done so many things for other governments that you don't even want your name on it, right? I think the leadership comes by explaining to them that what we finally care is the impact on TB, right? Whether we are on the paper or not, at some level really doesn't matter, right? We are solving something bigger. There is a purpose beyond ourselves. And it's an honor to be asked by the Indian government. It's an honor to be supporting WHO and have no expectation that it will come back to us in any way or form. That, I think, is the highest form of service. And there are people, amazing people, who do this and they expect nothing from it. All of you know Bill Faggy. I'm sure David knows Bill. Bill was a legend, right? He helped India end smallpox. If you read his book, what's the book called, David? House on Fire. There's a whole paragraph where he says, India was about to certify, I mean, it's well before me, okay? India was about to certify that they have eliminated polio, smallpox. Bill Faggy said, I'm leaving the country before that. They said, why? You, one of the big architects of India eliminating smallpox, we need you to be there to celebrate this. He said, no, I did not want the limelight on me. I wanted the limelight on Indian healthcare workers who went and vaccinated the last person in every last village and ended smallpox. He said, I left India before that momentous occasion. Now, what an amazing way to write about that in his book. He said, I don't care. I don't want, I want smallpox gone. I don't want this about me. That is a genuine ally at work, right? That's what's hard for us because we're so used to centering ourselves. That's what this Shea Abimbola's book does for me. Who is centered and how do you recenter global health is exactly what foreign gain's been. Am I constantly looking to make someone in Washington, D.C. happy about my work, or am I serving the sick people who are dying in my community? I think our obligation should be to people who are there not people far away. That is hard. Every one of us panders to donor needs, right? Donor says something, we're ready to dance because that's what we are expected to do. But our accountability is should be less to the donors, more to be to the community where we work. And that is not easy to come by in global health.
Madhu, it'd be great to, I know you've spoken on this before, but it would be good to understand that here in this room, for example, we have undergraduate students, we have graduate students just starting out, we have students who are just finishing up their PhDs, postdoctoral fellows, assistant professors looking for tenure, and then we have you and the dean. It's like,
You're the old people, yeah.
in this room, I believe. Anyway, so it's how to kind of tune this ethos of equality and equitable kind of global health practice, given the individual struggles that we also have to kind of pass and milestones that we also have to achieve.
Brilliant question, Amrita. I've been asked this like a million times every time I talk about this. So I think I'm appealing at this point primarily to people like me, or David, if you wish. Why? Because yet another talk at this stage in our life is irrelevant. Yet another paper, who the hell cares, right? We can afford to genuinely sponsor others in massive numbers at this point. I'm talking about senior established professors whose wall is covered by awards and degrees and certificates, whose CV is 200 pages long. We can genuinely step back and lift others up, which is what leadership genuinely should be, right? Leadership is genuinely about lifting others up, not oneself. So we can do it if we want. The fact that some of us still struggle to do that worries me a lot, right? We still push ourselves to the front, but that's what we think the world is asking of us. At a minimum, to put it bluntly, older senior men must absolutely lead the way and show how it can be done. Expecting a postdoc to do it seems a bit harsh, right? So, but if we model it for them, maybe they will carry that tradition forward, right? So I agree, it's not easy for people at all levels to do it, but I think humility, we can absolutely teach the youngest people. You don't go to Haiti thinking you know everything just because you're from McGill or York. You're going there, you will be mostly a pest. You will be pain for them to receive you. You know nothing, you will contribute nothing, but go observe, come back. Somebody was discussing this with me today. Remember, Paul went to Haiti as a med student. He was a nuisance. They wanted to get rid of him, but he went back again and again and again and again and again. And he kept going back until the day he died, and he gave back big time, right? So all of us, our journey starts somewhere. So initially we are in a humble learner mode, nothing more. And then one day, a day will come when I actually have a PhD. Now I know something, I can actually contribute. And then one day will come a time I can get a multi-million-dollar grant and make sure it goes to the right people involved. I can make big structural changes, right? But the journey starts with that first step. First step is go somewhere, but just be a humble observer, no more, because you know nothing at that stage, right? When I went into the community for the first time, I can't even begin to tell you the kind of crazy stuff that I learned because I shattered my mind. We all have to start somewhere. Okay, who else?
Charity.
My name is Patty. I was actually my mentor and full docs also. But I wonder what you think. I was trying to talk to on Google and it just struck me to look for about year undergrads. And some of them said something that struck me that even within their family, like siblings or their parents, there's this kind of polarization that has happened, right? And this distrust of science. With COVID and now with what's happening in the US, it's almost like you're either in the camp of science or you are not in the camp of science. And remembering that we've had this historical disconnect between what we do and what is actually happening, playing out in policies or what people practice. How can we begin to do that? Is just this wide gap that keeps widening and widening. And sometimes in our own family, how do we speak science when someone already distrusts science? Because they've been pulled into these algorithms on YouTube, they click on one video, another one opens, or there's conspiracy, and then they're just pulled into this world where science is the big evil. And then we are outside and you're not speaking the same language. Have you thought about how?
I mean, it's a terrifying reality, Charity. It's a terrifying reality. Honestly, I myself can't speak about some things with my own family in India. I'm struggling. I don't know how to broach it. I've had students come to me and said, I'm terrified of talking about vaccines to my family because they believe in this MAGA movement. And, it's very, very hard. So many people have been radicalized into something or the other. I think we just need to have more places just to have conversations, right? We are all sitting in isolated camps right now. Look at this conflict right now, right? How often have we had a safe space to just meet and talk about what's happening in the world, all the good and bad and ugly stuff together, right? So I think we need to think about how to do it. I would recommend to all of you to read this new book by Michael Mann and Peter Hotez. It's called Science Under Siege. Just got published barely a month ago. Oh my God. Scary as hell. One of them is a vaccine scientist who got attacked, Peter Hotez. The other is a climate scientist who got attacked. Both these guys have lived experience of trolling and vicious attacks on them, including death threats, okay? And together, they're dissecting why is science under attack, who is attacking science, and for what, right? Why is climate science disappearing? Why is vaccine science disappearing? I think we need to get to the bottom of a good understanding of what's going wrong, right? And then only we can start thinking about ways to do it. We just spoke about communication as one area. We publish in Lancet, we somehow magically think everybody has read it, right? Hardly anyone reads the Lancet. So we got to go and figure out how to get into your local newspaper. How do you get into your local radio channel? During the pandemic, some people did that, they had local community radio shows, and they were very popular because people were all not sure who to listen to in the pandemic. Do you just listen to PHAC director, or do you listen to your local health officer? We have to find ways. Communication is not just during a crisis. We can communicate at a regular, normal pace and try and reach more people. Question from Michael Davies Venn. Would you confirm that the challenges in global health that you talked about simply exemplify a greater challenge, which is failure of multilateralism? If you accept this, how would you imagine solutions from the context of multilateralism? As I said, multilateralism is dying, right? And I don't know who it is that we were discussing it with today, this morning over breakfast. I think our job as people who are passionate about global health is to reinforce that the world needs some global good things. Global good things means a common owned good platform that we need to continue working. Like PubMed is a global good thing. And PubMed could die tomorrow. They already paused PubMed during this government shutdown, okay? It could disappear tomorrow. DHS, right? Demographic Health Surveys. The world needs some common global good things, and every one of us should put in a little bit of time to prop up global good things. A free, an open source package, a free website, a free webinar, a more affordable course that you can offer to the world. Anything and everything. I mean, my students know this. For 20 years, I've put all my teaching slides on an open source website, TeachEpi. Just go find it. Decades of course material is there. And why do I do it? Because it's a global good. One day, somebody will read it, somebody will use it. I get random people emailing me, oh, I use your style. I stole your slides for this, that, or the other. I said, steal it. I put it there for a good reason, right? Knowledge is the only platform that grows when we share. That's why open access publishing matters, even more so now than ever before. So I'm always interested in open access resources. Kashmi has worked with me on so many platforms that we just put out for free. We just finished a critical path analysis in 10 countries. It's going to go free. That is the way we think and do, as opposed to copywriting it, patenting it, putting it behind a paywall. that is an example of fighting for global good. So anything like, we do, find ways to make it available because it is bucking the trend against where the rest of the world is going. The rest of the world is saying national, national, national. We are saying, no, we believe in multilateralism. We believe in instruments like that. That is why I continue to back WHO. Come what? When WHO invites me, I never say no. We never say no. Why is that? Because it's a global good. It's a true multinational platform, multilateral platform. We are WHO, WHO is us, because it's our tax dollars that go into WHO, right? It doesn't belong to anyone, it belongs to all of us. So find truly multilateral platforms and get behind it. As broken as it is, United Nations matters, right? Yeah. We need to have the UN. If not, what will we do, right? Find ways to support global good. Who else has a question? Anyone in the class? Yes, Sheila.
I hardly know what to say, but I thank you greatly. You bring up at the very end the UN and WHO, and I just have to add that note of optimism for myself that I think much larger is that in May of this year, WHO made a decision to draft a pandemic agreement. Yes. And I have to say, I've stayed awake many, many nights thinking we need this, but is it ever going to come? It sounds like it is coming. I know not a great deal about it except for that May statement and just last month. There has been an agreement, an actual document that is being considered. Pandemic agreement, we probably all know it. So maybe you should shut up. But basically, there's an acronym, PLOS. It's about sharing pathogen. What's
pathogen sharing agreement? Yes.
Benefit sharing, and if anything can give us hope. Well, there's a lot that can give us hope, but that is surely one of them. And they must be shaking in their boots, thinking, "Is this possible? Are we going to succeed in this?" And it's just one example of where public open access, discussion and engagement and conversation is terribly, terribly important.
Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you.
I'm sure the GH lab thought about it because it wasn't easy. This pandemic accord was opposed tooth and nail by Big Pharma, by the United States government, and it was passed without the United States government. So sometimes I think US government not being in the room is the best thing that can happen, right? Because if they were part of WHA, they would have killed it. And they're using the veto virtually every week to prevent a ceasefire. So I think there may be a silver lining. If US does leave all multilateral platforms, maybe the rest of the world can get stuff done.
Thank you, Madhu. And I know Dr. Hoffman, who's seconded right now to the Wellcome Trust, but he's very much involved. He's at York University as well, and at the Global Strategy Lab, and he's very much involved in also like being the Canadian representative, essentially, for some of the legal agreements around the pandemic accord. So it's very exciting. Thank you, Madhu. I think for our kind of group of students here who are out there getting fresh and ready to go in the world, this was incredibly inspiring. I mean, just some of the lessons to take from this is like humility, right? Communication, openness to listen and observe as opposed to do before being asked to do. You know, working with your communities, learning other people's insights, even who is on your committee. Who are you populating your committee with? Who are you considering as experts to the field that you're bringing into the space, into your research is already something to kind of think about intentionally, as you mentioned, with a lot of intentionality is a way to kind of go forward and go with health. Thank you so much. I won't keep you. The questions will keep coming. So I will stop here, but a huge round of applause.
Thank you, everyone.